My name is Peter and we're starting here on the front in this Runway Red color. I think it looks very good. And this is also the GT line. So it's not the GT version, but it's the GT line. So it's an exterior and interior styling package rather than a fundamentally different car. But with that GT line you get some more aggressive front bumpers and also on the rear. And we have a very interesting new face with this Constellation style daytime running light. It's something you have to want to see, I think, but it is a design language that Kia has chosen with the EV9 and will implement in all its future models. It looks kind of cool, also with these adaptive LED beams here. You can see that they're a bit lower in the car. They're not quite here yet, but they're lower in the car because these modern LED beams are so good that they don't have to be mounted very high anymore in order to project enough light on the road. If we move around the car, 20-inch wheels in this version, and you can see a bit of a two-tone theme here with the black here and the red and then black here again. I think it's quite good looking. It's also the question if this is a full-size SUV or maybe a high hatchback or maybe a coupe style SUV. Not really sure what it is. It gives me Jaguar I-Pace vibes. I think it's a good looking car, but you can see it's only 155 high, so it's not very high. It's not a full SUV, I think, but it is a good looking car, and with 4.70 meters long, you can tell that it's also certainly not a small car. As we'll see in the interior shots later, there's certainly a lot of space there too. You can see these puppy Audi door handles, by the way. They come out automatically when you approach the car and when you unlock it, and of course they go flush with the door for ultimate streamlining. Here in the back we got the charging port, and there's some updates there too. The Kia now can charge with 270 kilowatts, which is a bit higher than the previous model, so that's nice. The battery sizes have increased as well, and that means that you can charge this 84 kilowatt hour pack from 10 to 80% in about 20 minutes. So that's great, nice high speed, but of course you can charge with 11 kilowatts at home. Here in the back, obviously we got a look at the trunk right away as well. Opening this up, almost 500 liters, so that is a very nice amount of usable space. The only downside of the shape of the car is that this line slopes quite aggressively, so there's not that much height in the trunk because you're having to deal with that shape. That said, 500 liters is easily enough for basically anything, your holiday, your skis, everything can go in here, no issues whatsoever. And there's even a little bit of extra space here under the double floor. You can there's a few squares here, and you can actually lift this whole thing up for a bit more space underneath. So that is actually quite usable. The rear design has stayed basically unchanged, so you still have this continuous light bar, and then with the shape here for the lights and the rear. And of course you have this extra bumper with the GT line. Now what's also practical, besides the boot, is the frunk. So let's go to the front. Opening this up. When I open this up and you look inside, you might wonder, where did they put the frunk? Well, it's this box here. It's a bit of a glorified cool box if you ask me, but it does work because it is a significant amount of space. I wouldn't say it fits a full hand luggage or anything, but this is certainly enough for your groceries, any kind of shopping, but also, for example, your charging cable that you saw in the back. When it's full of luggage, obviously you got to put that cable somewhere, and you don't want to put it under the floor because with luggage on top you can't reach it. And then this is a great spot to put it. It's waterproof, so you know, even if things get dirty or wet, you can just throw it in, no issues whatsoever. So actually I think it's a nice option that they included, even though the full execution, could use some work. Sitting here in the front of the Kia EV6, it is actually quite a nice place to be. I got good view out, pleasant large front window, which is always good. And the side windows provide a lot of light and influx from the outside as well. So overall, that is off to a good start. There's a lot to see here. Starting with the interior, this is the vegan leather suede two-tone interior for the people who are into that kind of stuff. And it is of course the GT line, so we get a few nice extras. And the big absence is piano black. There's a few things, especially here around the vents, but basically no piano black. So that is excellent. Well done, Kia. That is how we like it. No scratchy, fingerprinty materials. Instead, we get this sort of scale skin, I suppose, here on the dash as well, which looks nice. I'm not really sure how durable that will be, but overall the materials are quite nice. I'll give you the full tour. We'll start here on the left with some normal switches for your window controls and also normal switches for your mirrors. So that is excellent, no swipey nonsense going on. That is how we want it. Some buttons for my seat memory here, and as well as a few controls for the traction control and opening the boot and the charging flap. The door bins are lined with felt, so that is excellent too, but they're quite small, so you're not going to put any large coffees or anything in there. But overall, it's a nice door design with some soft spots where you rest your elbows, and the touch points are pleasant as well. Moving on to the steering wheel, it is a new steering wheel. And it is square-ish, but not in a way that it gets annoying. I've said in, I think it was a Renault videos, they had a sort of an octagon-shaped steering wheel, which was annoying, especially in corners when it has to sort of slide through your hands. This is square-ish, but it's not a problem, so it's quite nice to use. There's two large clusters of buttons on it, and they're not like technically fully split, so there's some system control here, some system control there, your cruise control and your driver aids are here as well, and the radio control and so on are on this side. So it's a bit of a mix, and obviously you use this to control your driver's display right in front. Before we get there, there's also a drive mode button on the bottom of the steering wheel to change from sport to eco to normal and individual. There's normal stalks for your indicators and your wipers, so that is excellent too, and that frees up a lot of space here. And there's two paddles for your regen braking. So you can turn that completely off, level 0, or you can make it more intense if you want to regain a bit of energy. Personally, I prefer it off altogether, especially on the highway. I find it pleasant to be able to let go of the gas completely and just roll and reduce speed slowly that way. But if you want to do almost one pedal driving, you can put it in the full banana. And then especially in the city, it is also possible to barely touch the brake. So depending on what you prefer, you can adjust that here. You can even adjust it sort of on the fly, although that is a game you'll play for about a day and a half, and then it gets tiring and you just leave it in one setting, I find. With this GT line, by the way, you also get aluminium pedals and some GT special floor mats. So that's kind of nice. Moving from the driver's display and the head-up display to the central display, that is obviously where you do anything from your navigation to setting the whole car up. It's quite nice. It's responsive enough that, you know, it's easy to work with. It's quite clear also with these big menu tiles. So, you know, it's not the fastest system in the world, but it is more than adequate, and it's actually quite pleasant to use. So you can, you know, basically control the whole car here, and it's all with this sort of menu on the left, and then whatever you want to do in the middle. So overall, it works quite nice, and it is a system that is, you know, easy to use, and especially because there's also search functions in there, so you can use it basically like a full-on computer. Moving down, we have two manual options here for the ventilation, which is nice. Everybody understands how that works, so that is excellent. And then we have a dual interface for your climate controls here. So we have some manual options here, for example, to adjust the temperature, so that is quite nice. You can do that nice and easy, but then you have to use this touch surface, for example, to adjust the fan speed. So it's a bit of a double solution. So this is all touch, and it's not haptic, so there's no feedback in it, which means you always have to look at this and take your eyes off the road in order to make any kind of adjustments and to know where you're touching. So there's no feedback in here. So you saw it change over there. I can toggle between the volume and the media controls and the climate controls here, which is handy because, you know, it saves up a lot of space that you don't have to do that double. But the downside is that you'll see me pressing these buttons down here. These are the same touch sensitive non-haptic buttons that are easy to sort of gloss over when you're trying to do something here. So that is something to take into consideration. You're definitely going to touch your seat controls, your seat heating and so on often when you are interfacing here. Now the problem with this is if I adjust it back to media controls here, you can see, for example, that the volume is over here, which makes no sense since this is obviously something that the passenger will use. So why didn't they do that over here? And the other downside is that after a few seconds, it will switch back to klima. So you're constantly having to toggle back and forward between the two because it switches back. So it's not the ideal implementation, but this is all software, so this is also something that Kia can change over time. Now I mentioned the seat controls here. It's also your heated steering wheel. That depends on the version that you pick, of course. Below that is the start-stop button and a fingerprint scanner. So you can, like your phone, you can log into the car with your fingerprint here. You can also connect your phone to the car and that means you can make a digital key, which means you don't need to bring the key with you at all times. Then we have the gear selector, that is a circle. So if I press the brake and I can select my gears this way, very handy. I'm not really sure why it has to be like this. It's not the last word in innovation or anything, but it works. I suppose you can have this in any shape and size, and Kia went for this. And there the park button is in the middle, which is the only part that is piano black. Not really sure why they haven't gone for a matte finish here, because you'll touch this every time you drive. Then we have the camera button, the auto hold, and the parking sensor activation here, so that is all good. And you can see my phone in the wireless charging pad, which is not too big. If I slide it all the way back, you can see there's not that much space left. So depending on the phone that you have, it might not fit. But no issues there, because there's plenty of charging options here. You can see I have a cable here that is actually attached to a little clip. A really nice feature that they put a clip here on the side of the middle tunnel that you can just, plug a cable in so it is out of the way. Very nice, good call. And then that cable leads down here to a few charging options. We have charging only, and here a system and charging USB as well. Down here we have another USB and your 12-volt connection, so that is great too. Out of the way and there if you need it. And below here we have a big bin that fits basically anything that you usually have flying around in your car, but it is obviously unclosed or unlocked or anything, so anybody from the outside can see what's in here. Luckily there is also a middle armrest with that same sort of scale material, which is quite a deep bin, so that is quite handy to get things out of the way. And then last but not least, we have two cup holders here for your drinks that are a little bit adjustable, but not too much, and also not huge or anything. So your Cafe Grande will probably not fit in here all too well, but your normal drinking cup, no issues. In this version, we have a panoramic roof halfway into the car. That is, I would almost say, a necessity, because even despite this two-tone white-black interior, it still gets dark in here quite quickly. If I close it, you can see how much difference it makes, and especially for the people in the back, it makes quite a difference. So you'll probably have this open all the time, and it is really an option that you should consider. Last but not least, the rear view mirror is a good size, and you can also see through the car pretty well. Unless there's people sitting in the back, then it blocks your whole field of view. And there is proper cameras around the whole car, but not constantly while driving, as we've seen in the Tesla, for example. So you're going to have to work with that. The side mirrors do offer a lot of view backwards as well, despite the fact that the housing is a lot bigger than the actual mirror. There you can see there's a little bit of extra on the side. I'm not really sure why that is. It's probably aerodynamics, but it's just a chunk of plastic that sits there. So it doesn't add anything to your view. And I find it actually quite annoying that there's this thick border on the outside of the mirror. But you can see enough, so that is good. And obviously when you're maneuvering at low speed, you can turn the cameras on and all is well. Overall, it's quite a nice place to be. These seats are comfortable as well. In this GT line, I fit in them quite easily. Although they don't offer a crazy amount of support, they still feel snug enough for the kind of vehicle that this is. And the fact that I fit in them is always good news for me. And overall, it's a pleasant place to be. You're a little bit higher, but not SUV high, but certainly higher off the ground than your standard station wagon. And the dimensions of the car also allow you to place this car reasonably well, as we'll see with the driving later, thanks to the driving position in general. I have a good view out, a good overview of what's happening around the car. And thanks to the smart things that Kia has, for example, when you change lanes, you get a camera view on the side on your driver's display. Those things are nice. They really add to the driving experience and allow you to easily be aware of what's happening around the car. All right, driving the Kia EV6. What can we make of it? Well, this is the 84 kilowatt hour battery pack with the 229 horsepower drivetrain, which is a nice middle ground. There's a smaller version available with only 170 horsepower, and there's a higher capacity all-wheel drive version available as well, and there is the GT line in the end. But this 229 horsepower version is sort of in the middle of the drivetrain options, and it's actually quite pleasant to drive with. By no means is this going to be a hyper fast car. Kia says about 7 seconds to 100, because don't forget that this car weighs 2 tons before you put people and things in it. But with 229 horsepower, you're easily fast enough for any kind of day-to-day driving, and even at traffic light sprints, it's adequate. And it's a good balance, I think, between the size of the vehicle and the size of the battery, because obviously the more power you throw at the motors, the more juice it'll take and the quicker you will run out of battery. And I think this 84 kilowatt hour battery is a good size battery for proper traveling. Kia says over 500 kilometers. Well, in reality, you're not going to make that, obviously, because that's WLTP. But 450 towards 500 easily. So it is actually a nice combination in terms of available power, available battery size, and the combination between the two. And 229 horsepower is also very usable. We saw that in an earlier video with the Tesla Model S Plaid. You can't really look at the gas pedal or you're already in illegal speeds here in the Netherlands. And with this, it's a good performance that you don't have to floor the car all the time, but it's still a good amount of power to get on and off the highway easily, overtake some trucks, and be comfortable in and around town, you know, in small spaces, and getting over intersections and so on. So it's actually the drivetrain and the experience with the drivetrain in combination with the battery is quite nice. Here in the back of the Kia EV6, there is a lot of space. I'm about 183 tall and 90 kilos big, and you can see I have almost a full hand of knee room, which is excellent. And it needs to be a lot of room because the rear of the seats are rock hard. You definitely don't want to touch this with your knees. But yeah, you can see that I am more than comfortable. The only thing to note is that my feet don't really fit under the seat. I like to sit quite low in the car as a driver. So if you have rear passengers, you're going to have to raise your seat slightly for them to be comfortable with their feet underneath, because obviously you don't want to have your feet flat on the floor at all times. Another thing that's really comfortable is the fact that the bench is actually sloping upwards, and that means that the under thigh support, as we call it, is quite comfortable. You can see there's a little bit of space here around my knee, obviously, but there's a lot of support here from the bench on my leg. So that is actually great for longer journeys. The seat is also adjustable, by the way. It's now in its furthest back position. If I move it with the lever, you can see that this is the upright position. That gets quite sketchy in terms of the angle here with my hips and my back. So this is definitely not comfortable, but you have a little bit more boot space that way. But in reality, you'll probably have this all the way back most of the time, because this is a quite comfortable position. What is slightly less comfortable is the headroom. With 183, you can see I am basically touching the roof. I can put my hand in between, but that's about it. So anybody taller than me will not fit back here, or have to sit like this. So that is definitely something to take into account, especially when you buy this as a family car. If you have tall teenagers, then that might be an issue, even though there is a lot of legroom. Back here you have some simple controls for your windows, and you have heated outer seats in this case. We have some ventilation here on the door frame, and nothing going on in the middle. So there's no screen or ventilation options here, and there's also no way to adjust the temperature from back here. What you do get is some plastic seat covers, seat pockets rather, so you can put documents in here or anything. So handy, nice that it's there. And you get some USBs here in the front seats, which is great for all your charging options. If you need to charge even more, there is even a full-size socket down here. So that is a great feature, that you can charge your laptop or your cool box or anything there. That really adds to the practicality of this car. What is also really practical is the fact that there's no transmission tunnel, obviously. So there's a lot of room for me to move my feet around, which is key when you move to the middle seat, which is a bit harder and higher, but still doable for a shorter journey. But especially the fact that I have so much space to move my feet around is really nice. We saw that in the Porsche Macan in the previous video, that there was no way for me to move my foot between the middle tunnel and the bench. And that really sort of destroys the practicality of a car, especially the rear seats, obviously. But here, no issues whatsoever. Nice and free movement down there. You can see though that here in the middle I can technically fit, but you can see how much space I'm taking up for the outer seats, so that certainly doesn't work with 3 adults next to each other here, at least not adults my size. But adults and kids in sort of any configuration will be no problem. Then I got to show you the armrest situation with a little pull tag. Comfortable enough, but this is exposed at all times, so you always have your wrist landing in here, which is annoying. You can slide the cup holders into place. So you can either put stuff in here or you can put your cup, but both at the same time is not going to work. And either way, in either configuration, you'll have your hand or your wrist permanently in there, which is annoying. But you do have a ski hatch, so that is handy if you need to transport longer items, but you can also split the rear seats and fold them down if you want to. Last but not least, the ISOFIX situation is obviously down here, and there's no covers or anything, it's just the hook sits between the seat and the backrest, and that is all you're going to get. Overall, it's a good place to be. I often talk about the connection to the front of the car from here. The seats are not big, even though that I fit in them, they're not massive, and especially this line is very low. Because you can imagine children are about this much shorter than I am, so they often look into the shoulders of the seat. Not the case here. Nice connection to the front that way, even though the headrests are quite awkwardly shaped and big. And the fact that the panoramic roof is only halfway through the car, you really notice that there's a lot of blackness here from this dark ceiling. And that sort of does make it slightly more cramped in here, even though it is quite spacious. But from here you have a good connection to the front of the car. There's a lot of information coming from the front thanks to the big front window. But these headrests, like I said, they do take up a bit of your vision. But it is easy to communicate with the people in the front, so that is great, especially for children back here. I do have a button here on the steering wheel to change my driving mode. I can have an individualized setting where I can adjust two things, the steering weight and the regen braking. And there's a eco option and a sport option and so on. They don't really add that much. I would probably just leave it in normal most of the time because this car is economical enough as it is, but not sporty enough to warrant a full sports mode, I think. Kia says you should be able to dip into the 17s in terms of consumption per 100 kilometers. In reality, I haven't seen that at all. To be fair, it is 1 degree in January at the moment, but I think realistically you're looking at more like 20 kilowatt hours per 100 kilometers of real world use. And that's, you know, without hypermiling and still keeping a little bit of discipline with your right foot. So that is, you know, a good expected range for this car. Now, to show you a little bit of acceleration, we're going to get on the highway here. It is a little bit uphill, but it gives you a bit of an idea. We're doing 32 now, full power. 50, 60, 70, 80, 90, 100, and 10, 20, and 30. So, you know, by no means earth-shattering speed or anything, but very pleasant way to get on the highway. And also the way the power comes in, it's not like you fall out of your seat right away, but it's all very smooth and pleasant. Then once you're on the highway, it is a very pleasant cruising vehicle. It's relatively quiet in here, not too much tire noise and wind noise, so that is excellent. You can obviously put the excellent Meridian stereo system on and enjoy your journey. And journeys you'll make because of the big kilowatt hours available. This is easily a car that you can take on holiday. There's plenty of space in the back for your kids and your family and everybody else. And there's more than enough boot space for all your stuff. So it's a good GT cruising car to cover some reasonable distance in very big comfort. And then with the fast charging, you'll be on your way quickly as well. So, you know, all those things together makes this a very pleasant travel vehicle. Once you take it off the highway and you get into some tighter spaces, you do realize it's not a small car. You know, it's still a car that is approaching 5 meters long, 4.70 meters. Thanks to the excellent cameras though, you have a good idea of what's happening around you in parking garages and so on. And it is also a size that's big, but not unovercomable big. So, you know, often you have, especially with garage entry and exits, it gets quite tight if you have a big vehicle. But it's still a size that is sort of manageable. So, you know, parking spots, small spaces and so on are no issues whatsoever. This Kia EV6 GT line comes with a Meridian sound system. Obviously we can't play anything due to copyrights, but we can show you how it works. So we're going to go to settings, then we go to audio, and then we have a few options. You can see we have the Meridian IntelliQ, which is adaptive sound basically. So depending on how fast you drive or where you're driving or the road surface and so on, you can have big adjustment, small adjustment, or you can even turn it off completely. That is the volume limitation when you start the car, when you start playing something, so it doesn't blast in right away. You can change the position of the sound, which is obviously nice in terms of focus. The equalizer is quite limited, just treble, mid and bass. So that is all the adjustment that you're going to get. And then there's a few more options in terms of navigation and so on. There is an active sound design, which is the fake engine noise. Noise suppression when you have bad reception. And then there's some settings for the driver aids and so on, and your connected devices through Android Auto or Apple CarPlay. So not too much you can change, but the Meridian sound in general is quite nice, and it is, I think, especially in an EV, it is worth it to get a quality sound system because obviously you have no engine noise, just driving noise, tire noise and so on, but it is a lot more quiet in an EV in general, so it's nice that you have a good system to enjoy your tunes. There's a few things that are not ideal. The first is the driver's assistance systems. I personally want to turn those off as soon as I depart. There is a button here for your lane departure. If you press that for 3 seconds, that turns off completely, so that's great, that's good. You can also turn off the speed warning by pressing the volume button for 3 seconds. The only thing is that's only the audio warning that turns off, and then you still have a blinking symbol on your display and in your head-up display, constantly reminding you you're doing 1 kilometer too fast. So to turn that off, you still have to go into the menu 3 layers deep to turn that off somewhere. But luckily Kia gives you the option of a shortcut button that you can program the way you want, and I have that mapped to the driver aid menu. So that is 1 tap on the steering wheel and then 1 tap on the menu to turn that off. So it's a bit of a workaround, but it is, you know, in the end adequate. It's something you have to do every time you drive, so something to get used to. And the other thing that I already mentioned in the cockpit overview is the digital/analog display touch surface for the climate control as well as your media controls. It works, and it's a clean solution that can obviously be updated with software as well. But the fact is that it's a touch surface without haptic feedback and without any markings on it, so you always have to take your eyes off the road and look what you're doing. So that can be annoying, that you can't feel your way around if you quickly want to change something. So it's good that you can change the temperature, but the fact that you can't change the fan speed with a similar dial is, yeah, a bit of a, either go for one or the other, not something in between with then half of it missing, I'd say. So that is also something to get used to. Other than that, it's a pleasant place to be. It's a pleasant seat for me to sit in, also for longer journeys, so I'm comfortable here. Thanks obviously to the 18-way adjustment that you have in this GT version. And overall, yeah, it's a nice vehicle to move around in, pleasant to move people around in as well. My boys are 11 and 8, and they fit in there easily with all their stuff and all their friends. And thanks to the big boot, you can really make holiday journeys in this car, no issues whatsoever. So I think overall, apart from maybe a few details in the interior that could be ergonomically slightly improved, I think it's a good car to travel in both long and short distance. Kia EV6 comes in several flavors, so I got my cheat sheet here. We start with the 63 kilowatt hour battery pack. Comes in 2 versions, the Lite and the Plus, both with 170 horsepower rear wheel drive. 44,000 euro is your starting price. Then we move on to 84 kilowatt hour battery pack. That is the one we're in. You have the Air, the Plus Advanced and the GT line, that's this one. All with 229 horsepower rear wheel drive, starting at 49,500, going all the way up to 60,000 for this GT line. Then we have all-wheel drive, also 84 kilowatt hours, 325 horsepower. The Plus Advanced and the GT line, starting at 55.5, going all the way up to 63,000. Then there is the actual GT, so not the GT line, but the GT version of the car. 650 horsepower, also 84 kilowatt hour battery, all-wheel drive, and that will cost you 68,500 euro. The Kia EV6 was already a great car, but I think after this facelift, they've made the right changes. It looks great, I think, especially in this Runway Red color, and the changes they've made on the inside and the whole driving experience, I think they made a very compelling package. Depending on what you want to spend, I think you have a lot of options to choose from. I wouldn't go for the low horsepower one because I think the car is a little bit too heavy for that. I think this 229 middle of the range rear wheel drive version is quite nice because you get a lot of range from the 84 kilowatt hour battery, and you get enough performance for your day-to-day driving without being overly fast like the crazy 650 horsepower GT version. And I think 70k for that kind of power is maybe a good deal, but not really relevant in the real world. I think the Kia EV6 is a pleasant car. It's a nice, spacious electric car that is not quite an SUV, but still offers you a lot more than your traditional hatchback. And with the space inside and the options that you have and the range that you have, I think it's a great all-rounder. That's all I got for you in this video. Thanks for watching. Give it a thumbs up if you like it, and a sub to the channel is always appreciated, of course. And I'll catch you guys in the next one. Cheers!